Hey guys, tonight we begin with something you probably touch every day without a second thought ink. But this isn't the tidy, disposable cartridge in your ballpoint pen. We're journeying back to a time when putting words on a page was a dark art. A foul-smelling alchemical process involving poison, parasites, and fermented human waste. Forget any romantic notions you have of monks peacefully illuminating manuscripts. The truth is a much grimmier, colder, and frankly, more disgusting story. It's a story of how the most beautiful objects of an age were born from its filth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations. You've just woken up. The year is, let's say, 1250. The floor is packed earth and straw, and it's cold enough to see your breath. You are, by the standards of the day, fabulously successful. You own land, you have a stone manor house, which is really just a drafty hall with a fire pit in the middle that fills the room with smoke more effectively than heat. You have peasants who work your fields, a few dozen sheep, some pigs, and a nagging cough that will probably kill you in a decade. You are, in essence, the medieval equivalent of a hedge fund manager, but there is one thing you don't have. One thing that makes you feel profoundly, inescapably poor. In the local monastery, secured in a locked chest, inside a cold stone library, is a book. To you, this isn't just a book. It's an artifact, a miracle. You've seen it once, held for you by a stern-faced abbot whose hands were cleaner than any you'd ever seen. The pages weren't paper, they were vellum, the treated skin of a calf. So smooth and pale, they seemed to glow in the candlelight. The letters were perfectly formed, a regiment of black soldiers marching across the page, and woven between them were vines of gold leaf that shimmered like trapped sunlight, and illustrations of saints whose blue robes were more vibrant than the sky itself. You asked the abbot what such a thing would cost. He didn't laugh, but his eyes did. He explained, in a patient tone one uses for a simple child, that the vellum alone required the skins of over 150 calves, a whole herd of young animals, slaughtered, scraped, and stretched just for the pages, the blue in St. Peter's robe that came from a stone, lapis lazuli, that was smuggled across deserts and seas from a single mountain range in Afghanistan. It was, ounce for ounce, more expensive than gold. The gold leaf itself was hammered so thin it was like a solid breath, and applying it was a form of prayer in itself. And the ink, well, the ink was another matter entirely. He told you that the final cost of that single book, one single object you could hold in your two hands, was greater than the value of your entire manor. Your house, your fields, your peasants, your sheep, your pigs, every last miserable turnip in your cellar, all of it traded for one silent, heavy block of leather, animal skin, and exotic dust. This wasn't like buying a luxury car. This was like buying a skyscraper. It was a concentration of wealth so immense, so obscene. It was almost holy in its own right. You, the powerful landowner, can't read a single word of it. Your world is one of grunts and harvests and the ever-present smell of manure and damp wool. Your contracts are verbal agreements. Your history is the stories told by an old man by the fire. That book, however, contains a world beyond yours. It holds laws and histories and the literal word of God. To own, it is not just to own a thing of value. It is to own a piece of eternity. It is a symbol of power more potent than a sword. But here is the secret that the abbot didn't tell you. Here is the disgusting, practical magic that holds that sacred object together. The miracle is built on a foundation of rot, poison, and waste. That beautiful, impossibly black ink that seems to stain the very soul of the page. Its base ingredient is a parasitic growth, a cancerous tumor forced into an oak tree by a wasp. It's an alien-looking ball of wood called a gallnut. To activate its power, it's crushed and mixed with something called copperas, or green vitriol. It's a crystalline acid, a form of iron sulfate that literally bites into the vellum, burning itself into the skin so it can never be erased. It's so corrosive that, over the centuries, it will slowly eat right through the page, leaving a ghost of a letter burned into the sheet below. This permanent mark is an act of chemical violence. And what holds this concoction of plant cancer and corrosive metal together? What gives it the flow and grace to glide from the tip of a feather? Sometimes it's wine or stale beer, but often it's something far more personal, something the monastery collects in a barrel left in the corner of the latrines. Aged, fermented urine. The ammonia acts as a potent binder, a disgusting but effective medium for this toxic potion. Think about that. The holy prayers, the Psalms of Redemption, the Chronicles of Kings, all meticulously written in an acidic brew of wasp-induced tumors and fermented human waste. The book's spine isn't held by some magical force, but by glue rendered from boiled-down horse hooves and fish bladders, a foul-smelling gelatin of boiled refuse. The very thing that preserves history stinks of the charnel house. So when you stand there, in your cold stone hall, dreaming of that priceless book, you are not just dreaming of wealth. You are dreaming of an object bound by decay, a sacred text held together by poison, a piece of heaven built from the most profane and foul-smelling dregs of the earth. This isn't just a book. It's a paradox you can hold in your hands. And the story of its creation begins not in a sunlit abbey, but in the shivering cold of a silent room, with a man whose only weapon against the darkness is a sharpened goose feather and a pot of something unspeakable. Its creation begins not in a sunlit abbey, but in the shivering cold of a silent room, with a man whose only weapon against the darkness is a sharpened goose feather and a pot of something unspeakable. You feel that cold before you are even truly awake. It's a damp, penetrating chill that seems to emanate from the very stones of the monastery. A cold that has settled deep into your bones through the night. There is no gentle alarm clock, no gradual sunrise filtering through your window. There is only the jarring, metallic clang of a bell from the chapel tower, a sound that doesn't so much wake you as it does violently summon you from a brief, troubled sleep. It is 4 a.m. The sun won't be a rumor for hours. Your bed is a straw-stuffed mattress on a wooden plank. Your blanket is a single layer of coarse, itchy wool that offers less in the way of warmth and more in the way of a constant, low-grade skin irritation. You swing your legs over the side, and your bare feet meet the stone floor. The shock of it is brutal, a jolt that travels up your spine and rattles your teeth. This is your morning ritual. Not coffee, not a warm shower, just the intimate, personal agony of a cold floor in the pitch-black dark. You pull on your habit, another layer of stiff, unforgiving wool. It smells faintly of old sweat, beeswax, and damp earth. Congratulations. You are dressed for work. Your destination is the Scriptorium. The word sounds grand, doesn't it? Like a hallowed library of divine thought. The reality is something closer to a walk-in refrigerator designed for punishing sinners. It is a long, narrow room, almost always built on the north side of the abbey. This isn't an architectural accident. A north-facing room gets no direct sunlight, which prevents the harsh glare from damaging the delicate pages and provides a steady, even light to work by. It also means the room is, without exception, the coldest place in the entire compound. You take your place at your designated carrel, a small, slanted wooden desk partitioned off from your brother's. It's the medieval version of a cubicle. Only your co-workers are not allowed to speak to you. And instead of passive-aggressive notes about the office microwave, there is only the looming, ever-present judgment of God. And then there is the great silence. It is the first and most important rule of the Scriptorium. Asterisk, silentium, asterisk. It is absolute, not just a request for quiet, but a holy vow. Talking is forbidden, seen as a gateway to gossip, vanity, and error. Your entire workday, from the first sliver of gray dawn to the last fading ember of dusk, will be conducted without a single spoken word. This isn't the peaceful silence of meditation. It is a thick, heavy, oppressive silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic scratching of a dozen quills on parchment, the occasional sniffle, a stifled cough that echoes like a gunshot, or the soft, wet scrape of a knife correcting a mistake. But of course, you still need things. Your quill might break. Your ink pot might run dry. You might need a new sheet of vellum. For this, you have a language, ang elaborate, almost comical system of hand gestures. To ask for a book, you extend your hands and make a motion of turning a page. To indicate a pagan work, you scratch your ear like a dog. To signal that you need the works of a specific church father, you might rub your nose or tug on your earlobe in a particular way. It is a silent, frantic game of charades, where the grand prize is simply being able to continue your slow, agonizing work without interruption. The primary enemy in this room is not distraction, but the cold. Fire is the great terror of any library. And a scriptorium filled with priceless, flammable books made of dried animal skin is the one place where a spark would be catastrophic. So, there are no fireplaces, no braziers, no heating of any kind. Your only source of warmth is your own dwindling body heat and the layers of wool you're wearing. You can see your own breath misting in the air before you. Your fingers, the most important tools you possess, are stiff and clumsy with cold. You tuck them into your armpits between sentences, trying to coax some life back into them. The ink in your inkhorn, a small pot made of horn or ceramic, threatens to freeze solid. You might have to place it in your lap, cupped in your hands, using your own body as a pathetic heating element just to keep it liquid. Your joints ache with a deep, grinding pain that will only worsen as you age. A condition later generations would call arthritis, but you simply call winter. This is the silent war you wage every day, a freezing battle against the slow decay of your own body, all in the service of making a perfect, unchanging word. Your other enemy is time, measured not by a clock on the wall, but by the slow, inexorable march of the sun across that single, north-facing window. That cool, indirect light is your entire world. It governs your pace. As the day wears on, the light shifts, and you must subtly adjust your posture, leaning ever closer to the page. By late afternoon, the room begins to sink into a deep gloom. There are no electric lights, no desk lamps. Candles are sometimes permitted, but their flickering light is terrible for detailed work, and the risk of dripping hot wax onto a page that took a week to write is a scribe's waking nightmare. When the light is gone, your day is done. There is no overtime. There is only the darkness and the knowledge that tomorrow you will return to this same cold, silent room to fight the same battle all over again. This is the environment where a book is born, not in a cozy, scholarly office, but in a crucible of physical misery. It is a place of immense spiritual devotion and profound physical suffering, a factory of silent, freezing labor where the product is not a tool or a trinket, but the immortal Word of God. And now, sitting on your hard wooden stool, your back aching and your fingers numb, you must pick up your quill, dip it into that pot of dark, viscous liquid, and prepare to make a mark that must be perfect. Because in this world of pain and permanence, there is no delete key. There is only the tyranny of the indelible stain of dark, viscous liquid. And prepare to make a mark that must be perfect. Because in this world of pain and permanence, there is no delete key. There is only the tyranny of the indelible stain. Your hand, holding the sharpened goose feather, hovers over the page. It trembles, just a little, not just from the cold seeping up from the stone floor, the kind of damp chill that lives in your bones and never truly leaves. No, this is the tremor of pure, unadulterated fear. Because the sheet in front of you isn't paper. Paper is a cheap, flimsy novelty for merchants' notes and other disposable thoughts. What you're about to deface is vellum. To call it a page is an insult to the dead. This is the ghost of an animal, a calf, most likely, unborn or newborn, its skin flayed, scraped, dehaired with lime, stretched on a frame until it was tight as a drumhead, and then polished with pumice stone for days until it became a pale, creamy, almost translucent surface. It is smooth, yes, but it still feels faintly alive, retaining the memory of muscle and sinew. This single sheet represents weeks of filthy, painstaking labor. To create an entire Bible, the Gospels, you would need a flock, the skins of over 100, sometimes 200, sheep or calves, An entire farm's worth of livestock, slaughtered, skinned, and processed into a single object. The book you're working on costs more than the stone building you're working in. It is, quite literally, a treasure. And you are about to spill a corrosive, permanent black liquid onto it. There is no undo. There is no backspace key. The digital ether that forgives our every typo, every clumsy turn of phrase, every half-baked thought, does not exist. There is only this moment, the quill tip, glistening with black potential, and the impossibly expensive animal skin waiting below. You are performing surgery with a bird feather. You can hear the breathing of the other monks in the Scriptorium. It's the only sound, besides the distant clang of a monastery bell and the incessant scratching of quills on skin. The silence isn't peaceful. It's the silence of a bomb squad at work. Every man hunched over his slanted desk is in the same state of controlled panic. One cough, one sudden sneeze, one involuntary jerk of a tired muscle, and disaster strikes. A fat, black drop of ink falls from your quill, landing on the vellum like a spider squashed on a wedding dress. The stain spreads instantly, its dark little tentacles seeping into the pores of the skin. Your blood runs cold. The work of the past week, the perfectly ruled lines you made by pressing a stylus into the page, the delicate letters you've already formed. It's all threatened. The page is ruined. The entire bifolium, the folded sheet that makes 4 pages, may have to be discarded. The cost of your sneeze is the life of a lamb, and the fury of the abbot. Now, if the mistake is small, a single misplaced letter, a tiny slip of the pen, there is a solution. But the solution is an act of violence. You set down your quill and pick up your knife. The same knife you used to sharpen your feather now becomes an eraser. You hold your breath, your knuckles white, and you begin to scrape. Gently, so gently, you scratch away the top layer of the vellum, lifting the ink-stained skin fibers one by one. It's like trying to remove a tattoo with a razor blade. Scrape too hard, and you create a hole. The vellum becomes thin, weak, and translucent. A ghostly wound on the page. Scrape too little, and a shadow of your mistake remains. A gray ghost of failure to haunt you for eternity. When you're done, the surface is rough, scarred. It will never be the same. The next time you write over that spot, the ink will bleed, feathering out into the damaged fibers. A permanent announcement to every future reader here. A fool made his mark. This is the pressure you work under. 6, maybe 8 hours a day. Your back is a rod of pain from the hard wooden bench. Your eyes burn from staring at the tiny letters in the dim, flickering light of a distant window. Your fingers are permanently cramped into a claw, stained black at the tips. The abbot drifts through the room like a specter, his robes whispering across the flagstones, his gaze lingering on your work. He doesn't need to say anything. You feel his judgment like a physical weight. Think of the modern anxiety of hitting send on an important email. That brief moment of panic. Now multiply that by 1,000. Every single letter you form is a public, permanent send. A single book could take a scribe years. Years of this sustained, nerve-shredding tension. Years of knowing that a moment's inattention could undo months of progress. It was a war of attrition fought against your own fallible body. against the dying light, against the simple, brutal permanence of the ink. This wasn't a creative act. It was a feat of high-stakes transcription, of endurance. A spiritual marathon where the finish line was the final dot at the end of the last psalm. And every step along the way was a potential pitfall into ruin and shame. So you take a slow, steadying breath, you lower the quill, the tip touches the vellum, a tiny scratch, a whisper of sound, and a perfect black line begins to form, one letter, then another, the beginning of a word that will join a sentence, that will fill a page, that will become part of a book that might just outlive you, your monastery, and the kingdom it resides in. No pressure at all. Now, let's talk about that soot you've been scraping off your greasy oil lamp. Because that foul, black powder is the simplest, safest part of this whole infernal process. Eyes in, no pressure at all. Now, let's talk about that soot you've been scraping off your greasy oil lamp. Because that foul, black powder is the simplest, safest part of this whole infernal process. Your lamp isn't some romantic flicker of golden candlelight. Beeswax is a luxury reserved for the altar, for God's house, not for your freezing little corner of the Scriptorium. Your lamp is a shallow dish of cheap pottery or soft stone, and its fuel is tallow, rendered animal fat. The smell is your constant companion, a thick, greasy odor that clings to your wool tunic and the inside of your nostrils. It's the official perfume of poverty, the scent of burning fat that never quite leaves the air, a constant reminder of the animal that had to be slaughtered so you could have a sputtering, pathetic light to ruin your eyes by. Every evening, after the light has failed but before you're allowed to collapse onto your straw pallet, you perform a ritual. You take a piece of cold slate or a shard of broken pot, and you hold it just above the wavering, smoky flame of your lamp. You don't hold it in the flame, because that would just burn it clean. You hold it in the plume of greasy smoke that rises from the wick, a sad little column of unburnt carbon particles looking for a place to rest. And they rest on your slate. Slowly, painstakingly, a delicate black dust begins to coat the surface. It's a process of incredible patience. It's like trying to collect fog or bottling a shadow. You sit there, your arm aching, holding this piece of stone in the smoke stream, watching the blackness grow, molecule by molecule. The light from the lamp dances on your face, casting long, distorted shadows that make the stone saints carved into the walls look like they're weeping. After an hour, you might have a thin, velvety film of pure black. Then comes the scraping. You take your knife, the same knife you use to sharpen your quills and scrape mistakes off the parchment, and you gently, carefully, shear this black dust from the slate onto a clean, dry shell. The powder is impossibly fine, lighter than air. A stray breath, a sudden draft from the unglazed window, and your evening's work is just a black smudge across the floor. This is lamp black, the ghost of 1,000 burnt fats, the condensed essence of smoke. It's basically prehistoric laser toner, but with more dead sheep involved. This isn't even a special process. Every household that can afford a tallow lamp does this. The soot that collects on the ceiling above the fire, the black grime that coats the inside of a cooking pot, it's all the same stuff. Carbon, the fundamental building block of life, now reduced to a sterile black powder for your purposes, though you need it to be as pure as possible. Soot from a wood fire is full of ash and tar. No, you need the greasy, pure black that comes from burning oil or high-quality fat. But high quality isn't in your budget. You get the dregs, the stuff that sputters and spits and smells like rancid meat. Your soot is probably not the best. Once you've collected a pitifully small mound of this black dust, maybe enough to fill a thimble, the real alchemy begins. And by alchemy, I mean you just add water. The soot itself is just a pigment. It has no desire to stick to anything. It will brush right off the page. It needs a friend, a binder to hold it in place. If you're lucky, the monastery has a supply of gum arabic. It's a hardened sapwood from the acacia tree, a plant that grows in hot, dry lands you've only heard of in the Bible. It arrives in dusty caravans, looking like lumps of amber, and it costs a small fortune. You grind a piece of it into powder and dissolve it in water, creating a slightly sticky liquid. You then carefully, reverently, mix in your precious soot. You grind it together on a stone slab with a stone pestle called a muller, working the two together, back and forth, round and round, until every single particle of carbon is suspended in the sticky water. The goal is a smooth, flowing liquid, black as a starless night, with no lumps or grit. If you're not lucky, you don't get gum arabic. You get the medieval equivalent of school glue, a little honey, maybe, or the goo from boiling down scraps of parchment, which is, let's remember, animal skin. So you're making glue out of skin to write on other skin. There's a certain grim efficiency to it all. This ink, this humble carbon black, is a gentle ink. It's stable. It doesn't fade. The carbon particles are chemically inert, meaning they don't react with the air or the parchment. They just sit there. This ink is a polite guest on the page. It rests on the surface of the vellum, clinging to the fibers with the help of its binder. It doesn't soak in. It doesn't stain. It doesn't burn, which also means it can be removed. A determined person with a sharp knife and a steady hand can scrape your words away, leaving only a faint ghost on the skin. Your work, your hours of writing and weeks of soot collecting, could be erased to make way for a grocery list or a new prayer. And that is why, for all its simplicity and stability, this soot ink is not enough. It's reliable. It's ancient. The Egyptians used it on papyrus thousands of years ago, but it lacks aggression. It lacks permanence in a world where everything is trying to rot and disappear. You need an ink that doesn't just sit on the page. You need an ink that bites into it. An ink that becomes part of the vellum itself. A chemical tattoo that cannot be scraped away without destroying the page entirely. You need an ink born not from greasy smoke, but from a wound in a tree, a strange, cancerous growth created by an insect, combined with a corrosive mineral dug from the earth. You need a potion of rot and metal. An ink that actively tries to eat the very page it's written on, because in the fight for eternity, being polite gets you nowhere. You need something that will stain history itself. And for that, you have to go looking for a very specific kind of alien-looking egg growing on the side of an oak tree. So you leave the flickering lamplight behind. You leave the smell of soot and old wax. and step out from the cold stone of the Scriptorium into the even colder air of the outside world. The quest for a better ink, A times, real times, ink, doesn't happen at your desk. It happens out there. In the woods, you pull your wool cloak tighter, the damp air clinging to the rough fabric. The forest that surrounds your monastery isn't a friendly place. It's not a park for a leisurely stroll. It is a dense, dark, and often forbidden place. Every tree, every fallen branch, every rabbit scurrying in the undergrowth technically belongs to the local lord. Poaching isn't just about hunting deer. You could lose a hand for cutting down the wrong tree for firewood. But you're not looking for firewood. You're looking for a disease, a beautiful, useful, and incredibly strange disease. You push past wet ferns and thorny brambles, your leather shoes sinking into the mud. You're heading for the oldest, most gnarled trees in the forest, the oaks. To the pagan mind, these trees were gods. To the Christian mind, they are merely God's creation. But to you, a scribe, they are a kind of living chemical factory, and you are here to harvest its most peculiar product. Your eyes scan the branches, ignoring the acorns, ignoring the leaves. You're looking for something that doesn't belong. A growth, a woody, spherical lump clinging to a twig. Looking for all the world like a small, hard, wooden apple, or perhaps a tumor, or maybe, as you stare at one against the gray sky, an alien egg. This is a gallnut, or, as it was often called, an oak apple. It's not a fruit. It's not a seed. It is, in fact, an insect's nursery, created through a bizarre act of biological warfare. Here's how this strange magic works. A tiny, almost invisible creature called a Gall Wasp lands on a fresh oak twig. She is a mother with a dark purpose. She pierces the tender bark with her ovipositor, a needle-like appendage, and injects a single, minuscule egg deep inside the tree's living tissue. But she injects something else. Too, a cocktail of chemicals. A biological signal that fundamentally rewrites the tree's DNA in that one spot. The tree's immune system, for lack of a better term, panics. It detects a foreign invader, a wound, but the wasp's venom hijacks its response. Instead of healing, the tree is tricked into building cell by cell. The oak tree builds a prison around the invading larva, but it's the most luxurious prison imaginable. It's a fortress, a pantry, and a cradle all in one. The tree diverts all its best nutrients, its richest chemicals, to this one spot, building a dense, hard sphere around the growing grub. The gallnut is the tree's scar tissue, its panic room, its fever dream made solid. Inside, the wasp larva is perfectly safe, insulated from the weather and predators, feasting on the starchy, nutrient-rich home its unwitting host has built for it. You reach up and pluck one from a branch. It's surprisingly light, yet hard as wood. You turn it over in your palm. It's a perfect little world of deception. You're looking for the best ones, the ones that are heavy for their size and have no tiny hole in them. A hole is bad news. A hole means the young wasp has chewed its way out into the world, leaving an empty nursery behind. When it leaves, it takes most of the good stuff with it. Your perfect ingredient is a tomb. You need the galls where the wasp never hatched. or where you've caught it before it could escape. You are, quite literally, robbing a bug's cradle to make your ink. You gather dozens of them, stuffing them into a rough burlap sack. Each one that drops inside makes a dry, rattling sound. Why this obsession with wasp nests? Because of what the tree pumps into them. In its frantic effort to contain the intruder, the oak tree floods the gall with a massive concentration of tannic and gallic acids. These are the tree's defensive chemicals, the bitter compounds that make its bark and wood resistant to rot and insects. In a gallnut, these acids are concentrated to a ridiculous degree. It's the tree's chemical arsenal, all stored in one convenient, harvestable sphere. This isn't just some local folk remedy. The trade in these little woody lumps is a serious business. The best galls, the ones most potent with acid, don't even grow here in the damp forests of northern Europe. They come from the east, from the arid lands of Syria and the Near East. They're called Aleppo galls, and they are the gold standard, traded along the same routes as silks and spices. Merchants get rich shipping sacks of what are essentially fossilized insect homes across the Mediterranean. The document that grants a king his power might be written with an ink whose primary ingredient was harvested by a peasant in the shadow of a crusader castle. But you don't have access to such luxuries. Your monastery is poor. You make do with the local crop, the less potent but still functional galls from your own lord's forest. You sling the sack over your shoulder. It's not heavy, but it feels significant. You are carrying the heart of your ink, not the color, but its soul, its permanence, its bite. As you walk back, the forest seems different, no longer just a collection of trees, but a landscape of potential ingredients. The bark of that alder tree can be boiled for a reddish dye. The roots of that plant can make a yellow pigment. Everything is a resource. If you know the disgusting secret of how to unlock it, you arrive back at the monastery gates, a forager returning with his prize. You haven't brought back berries or mushrooms. You've brought a sack of tumors. You carry them to the workshop, a dusty, cobwebbed room separate from the scriptorium. The air here smells of strange herbs and chemical processes. This is the alchemy lab. You dump the galls onto a stone slab with a loud, clattering sound. They look like nothing, a pile of woody pebbles. But you know what's locked inside? A powerful acid, a chemical ghost, just waiting for the right partner to dance with. You have the first part of your potion, but this acidic brew on its own is pale, weak. To turn it into a deep, eternal black, it needs to react with something else, something metallic, something that rusts. You need to find a crystal that bites back. Acidic brew on its own is pale, weak. To turn it into a deep, eternal black, it needs to react with something else, something metallic, something that rusts. You need to find a crystal that bites back. You don't just go to a medieval supply shop for this. There is no neat little bottle with a label. You, or someone far less fortunate than you, has to go to the source. You have to go to where the earth itself bleeds poison. Imagine a dark, dripping hole in the side of a hill. This is a mine, but not for gold or silver. It's a place where water seeps through rocks, rich with iron pyrites, fool's gold. As the water and air get to work on the pyrites, a slow, toxic transformation occurs. The runoff that trickles down the damp stone walls is laced with sulfuric acid. This acid, in turn, dissolves other metals in the rock. And when it evaporates, it leaves behind a crust, a crystalline deposit of pale, sickly green. This is what you're after. It goes by many names. Copperes, green vitriol, but its scientific name is iron sulfate. The word vitriol itself would later come to mean cruel, bitter, biting speech. It's an appropriate name. This crystal is a lump of solid spite. You follow the flickering light of a tallow lamp, its greasy smoke stinging your eyes. The air in here is thick, tasting of damp earth, rotten eggs, and the kind of deep, ancient cold that feels personal. The water that slicks the ground under your worn leather shoes isn't just water, it's a weak acid. It's slowly eating the nails in your boots. With a scraper, you chip away at the crystalline formations on the cavern wall. They don't sparkle like jewels. They have a dull, sinister gleam, like the scales of a dead fish or a fragment of sea glass that has been cursed. They crumble into a gritty powder under your tool. You collect the pieces in a leather pouch, feeling their strange, slightly oily texture through the hide. You are harvesting poison. You are gathering the ingredient that will give your ink its angry, permanent heart. Back in the Scriptorium, the pale green crystals look almost harmless sitting in a stone mortar. But as you grind them down with a pestle, a faint, sharp metallic smell rises up. It's the smell of rust and lightning. You are breaking down a solid into a potential. Now, the alchemy begins. You have your pale tea of tannic acid, brewed from the Gallnuts. It looks like weak, forgotten rainwater. You take a spoonful of the powdered green vitriol and stir it in, and nothing happens. Well, not exactly nothing. The liquid might get a little murkier, a little grayer, but it's certainly not black. It's a disappointing, watery gray. You dip your quill into this concoction and write a word on a scrap of parchment. The word is faint, barely visible. It looks like a ghost of a letter. You might think you failed, that your ingredients were poor, that the whole endeavor was a waste. But then you wait, you watch, and you witness the magic of oxidation. The iron in the iron sulfate, now bonded with the gallic acid, is exposed to the air, and just like a nail left out in the rain, it begins to rust. But this isn't the orange-brown of common rust. It's a deep, complex chemical reaction that slowly, inexorably, darkens over the next few minutes, then hours. The pale gray line you drew begins to blush into a dark blue, then a purple, and finally, it settles into a profound, matte black. It's as if the words are developing on the page like a photograph. They aren't just sitting on top of the vellum, they are being born from within it. The iron has found its final form, a permanent stain locked into the fibers of the animal skin. This is why Iron Gall Ink was so prized. You couldn't just erase it. It wasn't a layer of pigment you could scrape off. Like soot, to remove it, you would have to scrape away the page itself. But this permanence comes at a terrible cost. The crystal always bites back. The same sulfuric acid that helped form the iron sulfate is still present in your ink. It's a quiet, patient fondant. As you write, you are not just leaving a mark. You are applying a mild, corrosive, You are tattooing the page with a chemical burn. Your hands would know this well. After a day of writing, your fingers would be stained a dark purplish black, a color that wouldn't wash off for days. Any small cuts or scrapes on your knuckles would sting and burn as the acidic ink seeped into them. It was a constant, irritating reminder of the volatile substance you were working with. But the real victim was the page. For years, for decades, for centuries, that trapped acid would sit there, dormant. Then, slowly, it would begin its work. It would start to eat at the collagen fibers of the parchment, making them brittle. The very lines of the beautiful letters would begin to decay, turning a rusty brown. In the worst cases, the ink would literally devour the page, leaving behind a lacework of holes where the words used to be. The most permanent ink in the world was also a self-destruct mechanism to create something that would last forever. You had to use an ingredient that was actively trying to destroy it from the moment it was applied. The scribe wasn't just a writer, he was a gambler, placing a bet against time itself, using a tool that was both the key to immortality and the agent of its own decay. Every word was a testament, and every letter a tiny, slow-burning fire. A gambler, placing a bet against time itself, using a tool that was both the key to immortality and the agent of its own decay. Every word was a testament, and every letter a tiny, slow-burning fire. But a fire needs fuel to flow. The concoction you've made so far, that sinister tea of crushed oak galls and powdered green vitriol, is little more than a watery stain. Touch it to your quill, and it will either refuse to cling at all, or it will bleed across the vellum in an uncontrollable, spider-webbing disaster. It has no body, no substance. It is a soul without a skeleton. It needs something to hold it together, to give it viscosity, to convince it to leave the goose feather and cling obediently to the animal skin. It needs a binder. And this is where your holy work takes a sharp turn into the deeply, profoundly unholy. If you are a lucky scribe, working in an abbey with a generous budget and good trade connections, you might have access to the classiest option gum, Arabic. It arrives in a dusty sack, looking like a collection of amber-colored pebbles. It is, in essence, fossilized tree sap, harvested from the acacia trees of Arabia and North Africa. You grind it into a fine powder and dissolve it in water, creating a clean, slightly sweet-smelling liquid that gives your ink a lovely, smooth consistency. It is the deluxe, premium choice. It is the choice for scribes who don't have to think about where their next meal is coming from, let alone their next batch of ink. You, however, are not one of those scribes. The trade routes are a mess. The abbot is pinching pennies to pay for a new stained glass window depicting his own face. And your supply of gum Arabic ran out 6 months ago. So, you must improvise. Your workshop of holy words now becomes a laboratory of desperation. Drawing its ingredients from the leftovers of daily life, your first stop is the dregs of the barrel. You make your way to the ale cellar, the air thick with the smell of yeast and damp stone. Here, at the bottom of the voon, lies a thick, sludgy residue of stale beer or flat wine. This is not the good stuff. This is the forgotten dregs. The stuff even the most desperate friar wouldn't touch. To you, It's a vital resource. You scrape out a cupful of this yeasty, vinegary sludge. The sugars within it will act as a binder, giving your ink a bit of stickiness and flow. Your finished manuscript, a vessel for the Word of God, will now carry the faint, ghostly scent of a tavern floor after a long night. As you mix it into your Iron Gall potion, you are performing a strange kind of alchemy, turning the byproduct of communal drunkenness into a medium for sacred prayer. Congratulations. You are now writing with the ghost of last week's party. But sometimes, even stale beer is too refined. Sometimes you need something with a little more character. Something with a chemical edge that the dregs of the wine cask simply cannot provide. And for that, you turn to the single most disgusting, yet surprisingly effective, secret ingredient in the Scribes' arsenal. You go to the pot in the corner. It's been there for weeks. A simple clay jug with a loose-fitting lid, and every brother in the dormitory has made a contribution. This is not a chamber pot for simple disposal. This is a vessel for collection and fermentation. This is your supply of aged urine. You unstopper the jug, and a wave of pure, weaponized ammonia hits you in the face. Sharp and eye-watering. The smell is the ghost of every meal, every drink, every minor illness that has passed through your brethren for the past month. It is a uniquely personal and pungently communal odor, and you are about to pour it into the ink you will use to copy the Gospels. It feels like a sacrilegious joke, but it is brutally effective chemistry. As urine sits and ages, bacteria go to work, breaking down the urea into its component parts, most notably ammonia. This ammonia does two wonderful things for your ink. First, it acts as a degreaser. Vellum, being animal skin, always retains a hint of natural oiliness, which can cause ink to bead up and resist the surface. A splash of aged urine cuts right through that grease, allowing the ink to bite into the page with ferocious certainty. It's the medieval equivalent of Windex, ensuring a streak-free finish on your sacred manuscript. Second, the ammonia helps control the pH of your volatile ink mixture, and it even acts as a mild preservative, fighting off the mold that is constantly trying to reclaim everything in your damp, cold world. So you hold your breath, try to think of heavenly choirs, and carefully pour a measure of the foul, golden liquid into your ink pot. You stir it in, watching the color shift slightly. The texture becomes slicker. The smell is now a complex bouquet of sour wine, rusting metal, and a public latrine. This is your tool. This is the lifeblood of your craft. Your modern equivalent of a smooth-flowing, archival quality gel pen is a potion that required a community to urinate in a jar for a month. Every time you dip your kill, you are dipping it into the collected biological waste of your sleeping, snoring, quietly suffering brothers. The sublime beauty of a finished, illuminated manuscript, the perfect lettering, the jewel-like colors, the sense of timeless divinity is held together, quite literally, by piss and flat beer. It is the ultimate paradox of your work, creating a window into heaven using the most foul and earthly materials imaginable, proving that holiness is not about the purity of your tools, but the devotion of your hands. The paradox of your work, creating a window into heaven, using the most foul and earthly materials imaginable, proving that holiness is not about the purity of your tools, but the devotion of your hands, and, of course, the strength of your stomach, because today is ink day. You don't do this in the Scriptorium. You wouldn't dare. The other brothers would excommunicate you on the spot. Not for blasphemy, but for the smell alone. No. This ritual happens in a damp, forgotten shed behind the kitchens. A place where condemned tools and broken pots go to die. This is your laboratory. Your foul, stone-floored, alchemical kitchen. The ingredients are laid out before you on a warped wooden plank, looking less like the components of writing and more like evidence from a crime. In a dusty clay bowl are the Gallnuts, those woody tumors stolen from the oak trees. They are light and hollow, and as you pour them into a heavy stone mortar, they rattle like bones in a cup. You take the pestle and begin to grind. It's a dry, dusty, thankless task. The rhythmic crunch and scrape fills the small shed. It sounds like you're crushing tiny, wooden skulls. A fine, brownish powder, smelling of dry bark and old paper, puffs into the air, coating the back of your throat. This is the heart of the ink, the tannic acid, waiting to be released. Next to it, in a piece of folded parchment, lies the green vitriol, the iron sulfate. It looks like dirty, crystallized, say a salt, catching the weak light with a sickly green glimmer. You handle it with care. You've seen what a stray splash can do to a woolen robe, eating a hole through it over a matter of weeks. It has an acrid, metallic smell, the scent of a blacksmith's forge after a rain. This is the ink's teeth, its bite. This is the corrupting element that will bring the blackness to life. And then there's the binder. Today, you're using the aged urine collected in a sealed pot for the last month. You unstop the lid, and a wave of pure ammonia and stale decay hits you so hard you physically recoil. It's a sharp, eye-watering stench, the ghost of every meal and drink consumed, now concentrated into a potent, golden liquid. This is what will make the ink flow, what will give it body. It's also what will make Brother Michael, who works at the next desk, complain for a week that your corner of the Scriptorium smells vaguely of a Parisian alleyway. The process begins. You take the gallnut powder and tip it into a large earthenware jug. To this, you add rainwater you collected in a barrel water that is far from pure, containing its own ecosystem of mosquito larvae and decaying leaves. You pour it in, and the brown powder swirls, creating a murky, sad-looking tea. And now, you wait. For days, you will leave this concoction to steep, to rot, to ferment. You'll visit the shed each morning, giving the jug a stir with a gnarled stick, watching as the water grows darker and the smell ripens from simple wet wood to a complex bouquet of damp earth and pond scum. This isn't a recipe, it's a managed decay. When the tannic brew is sufficiently potent, the moment of alchemy arrives. You take a measure of the green, crystalline vitriol and pour it into the jug, and you stir. At first, nothing seems to happen. The water is still just a disappointing brown. But then, you see it? Streaks of darkness begin to snake through the liquid. The iron is reacting with the acid. A ghostly, pale gray forms, which slowly, magically, deepens You keep stirring, mesmerized, as the gray becomes a deep violet, and the violet surrenders to a profound, bottomless black. It's as if you've poured a piece of the night sky into the jug. The ink's black blood is born, but it's thin, watery, and lifeless. It needs its soul. You hold your breath, pick up the pot of aged urine, and pour a steady stream of the foul-smelling binder into the black liquid. The effect is immediate and catastrophic to the senses. The sharp tang of ammonia collides with the earthy rot of the galls and the metallic sharpness of the iron. The resulting smell is a unique and unholy trinity of odors that has no modern equivalent. It's a smell that clings to your clothes, your hair, your very skin. You are brewing a potion of rot and metal, and you are its primary victim. You stir the final mixture, a sludge of murky, volatile blackness. It's not smooth. There are bits of sediment, impurities from the rainwater, undissolved crystals. Each batch is a gamble. Sometimes it's too acidic and will eat through the quill nibs in an hour. Sometimes it's too weak and will write in a faint, ghostly gray. Sometimes, inexplicably, it will refuse to dry, smearing across the vellum like a greasy stain. You are not a chemist following a formula. You are a sorcerer's apprentice, negotiating with hostile and unpredictable elements. Finally, you let it settle. A thick skin forms on the surface, like the film on a stagnant pool, which you carefully skim off. Using a funnel made of horn, you decant the finished ink into smaller pots. The precious, stinking black liquid that will be your life's work for the next few months. Your hands are stained, a deep, bruised purple that won't wash off for a week. You smell faintly, but undeniably, of decay. And as you carry the ink pots back towards the Scriptorium, you hold in your hands the most powerful and paradoxical substance you know. It is a foul, corrosive, foul-smelling poison, brewed in filth and secrecy, and with it, you will write the word of God. You hold in your hands the most powerful and paradoxical substance you know. It is a foul, corrosive, foul-smelling poison, brewed in filth and secrecy, and with it, you will write the word of God. But you can't just dip your finger in it. This isn't kindergarten arts and crafts. Your tools are waiting for you, laid out on the slanted wooden desk. They look less like the instruments of a scholar and more like the kit of a back alley surgeon. And none of them came from a shop. They came from nature, and they had to be broken first. First, you need a pen, but the concept of a pre-made, disposable pen is so far in the future, it might as well be witchcraft. Your pen is a feather, specifically, a primary flight feather from a large bird. A swan is ideal if you're feeling fancy and your abbot just sold a few acres of land. A crow feather works in a pinch. But the workhorse, the standard issue tool for trapping the divine on a page, is from a goose. You don't just go out and pick one up. It has to be one of the 5 or 6 outermost feathers from the wing. And if you're right-handed, you need a feather from the goose's left wing. Why the curvature? A feather from the left wing curves outward, away from your line of sight. As you write, a feather from the right wing would curve inward, obscuring the very words you're painstakingly forming. The goose, even in death, is expected to be ergonomic. The feather is useless as it is. It's soft, oily, and alive, you must first cure it, hardening it by plunging the tip into hot sand. You can smell the faint, acrid scent of burning protein. Then you strip away most of the barbs, leaving only a small, elegant tuft at the top for balance. Now it looks less like a feather and more like a dart. And now for the most important part, you pick up your most trusted companion. It is not your brother scribe, Martin, who snores in the dormitory and smells of onions. It is your penknife, a small, wickedly sharp blade. This knife is your life. It is your eraser, your sharpener, your ruler's edge, and your closest confidant. You use it to cut the nib, the very point of the quill. This is not a one-time procedure. It's a constant, maddening ritual. You make a long, slanted cut, then a shorter one to create a squared-off tip, and finally, a tiny, vertical slit down the middle to allow the ink to flow in a controlled, capillary action. You will perform this delicate surgery dozens of times a day. Vellum is abrasive. The act of writing is the act of wearing your pen down. Every few paragraphs, the lines will start to fatten, the sharp edges of your letters blurring into mush. So you'll pause, pick up your knife, and shave another sliver from the tip, recarving that perfect point. Writing is an endless cycle of decay and renewal, performed on the tip of a dead bird's feather. Your knife has other jobs. Say you make a mistake. You write times Deo times instead of times domino asterisk. You can't just hit backspace. The concept of a delete key is a laughable fantasy. Your delete key is this very same knife. You turn the blade on its side and you begin to scrape gently, very, very gently. You are not erasing ink. You are scraping away the top layer of the animal skin itself. The ink, bonded with the vellum, turns to a fine, dark dust, mingled with the microscopic fibers of what was once a calf. If you scrape too hard, you'll create a hole, a gaping wound in the page that might take you a full day to meticulously patch with a piece of scrap vellum and glue made from boiled fish cartilage. A single slip of the wrist can ruin a week's work. This is the tyranny of the permanent mark. Every letter is a commitment, and every mistake requires a scar. Your writing surface is no friendlier. This isn't paper. Paper is a flimsy, cheap novelty from the East. You work on parchment, or, for the really high-end jobs, vellum, processed animal skin. The page before you was, not too long ago, a bleeding lamb or a stumbling calf. It has been de-haired with lime, stretched on a frame until it's drum tight, and scraped with a crescent-shaped blade to a uniform thickness. But it is never perfect. It arrives at your desk feeling slightly greasy, with pores and imperfections. So you reach for your next tool, the stone. It's a piece of pumice, a light, porous rock that looks like it was coughed up by a volcano. Your job is to abrade the page, to smooth the surface into a fine, matte finish that will accept the ink without letting it bleed. You rub the stone across the vellum in small, circular motions. A fine, pale dust rises from the surface, a powder made of rock dust and animal skin. It gets into your nostrils, into the folds of your woolen habit. You are, in a very real sense, inhaling your canvas. This powder, called pounce, also helps fill the microscopic pores in the skin, a primer for the acidic ink to come. Your knuckles are raw from gripping the stone. Your shoulders ache from the repetitive motion, and you haven't even written a single word yet. Before the ink ever touches the vellum, you must rule the page. You use a straight edge, maybe a piece of polished hardwood, and a lead stylus or a pointed awl. You press hard, creating faint, almost invisible grooves in the skin, a perfect grid, a cage for the words. There are lines for the text, double lines for the top and bottom margins, and vertical lines to keep your justification perfect. It is a slow, methodical process. One crooked line, one slip of the awl, and the entire page will look drunk. The harmony is shattered. You might as well scrape the whole thing down and start over. So there you sit. In one hand, you have a feather, cut to a razor's point with your knife. Before you lies a sheet of processed skin, sanded down with a volcanic rock and scored with a grid of invisible lines. Beside you is a pot of corrosive poison brewed from tree cancer and metal. The goose, the knife, the stone. It sounds less like a writer's desk and more like the elements of a grim, pagan ritual. And in a way, it is. You are not merely writing, you are doing battle with your materials. You are taming a feather, scarring a skin, and controlling a poison, all to wrestle an idea out of your head and nail it to a physical object, hoping it will outlive you, outlive the monastery, outlive the king himself. This isn't creation, it's preservation through violence. Wrestle an idea out of your head and nail it to a physical object, hoping it will outlive you, outlive the monastery, outlive the king himself. This isn't creation, it's preservation through violence. And you, the scribe, believe this violence is directed outward. You are conquering the blankness of the page, taming the chaos of the unwritten world. You believe the ink is your weapon, your soldier, your brand of permanence seared into the skin of a dead sheep. For a few hundred years, you would appear to be right. The words hold. They are crisp, dark, and defiant. They cannot be scraped away without leaving a deep and permanent scar. You have won. You have made a mark that will outlast stone. But you have been tricked. You, the patient, pious monk, have been the victim of a spectacular, slow-motion chemical swindle. The very potion you brewed for eternity was, in fact, a poison, a time-release acid capsule delivered by the tip of a feather. The permanence you achieved was a lie, because the words are not resting on the page, they are eating it. The villain in this tragedy is the same ingredient that gave you your confidence, the green vitriol. The iron sulfate, in your quest for the darkest, most indelible black. You were often generous with it, a little extra for a sharper line, a bit more to ensure the ink truly bit into the vellum. Every time you did this, you weren't just making ink, you were loading a gun and setting a timer for 500 years. The Iron Gall Ink doesn't just dry on the surface like your humble soot-based carbon ink. No, it soaks into the very fibers of the parchment, into the collagen matrix of the animal skin, and a chemical reaction takes place. It becomes one with the page, but there's always leftover material, unreacted iron ions, and More sinisterly, trace amounts of sulfuric acid. For the first few decades, nothing happens. The book is opened. Read by candlelight. Its pages turned by greasy fingers. It survives a leaky roof, a bit of mold, the general damp chill of a monastic library. But all the while, deep within the fibers of the page, the ink is biding its time. The humidity in the air, the very breath of the monks sighing over the text, is its accomplice. The moisture activates the dormant acid. The iron ions begin to catalyze a reaction, a form of oxidation. Put simply, you have invented rust. But for paper, a slow, elegant, literary rust. Imagine yourself, not as the scribe, but as a conservator 1,000 years later. You are in a sterile room, the air humming with the sound of climate control. You wear white cotton gloves. The light is filtered, free of damaging UV rays. Before you sits a book from the 12th century. The sheer fact of its survival is a miracle. You open it with a surgeon's care. The smell hits you first. It's not the pleasant, dusty scent of old paper. It's the smell of old paper. Yes, but with a faint, sharp, metallic tang. It is the smell of slow decay. You turn to a page of dense, beautiful script, but something is terribly wrong. The words are no longer a crisp, satisfying black. They are a brittle, rusty brown, and they seem to be bleeding. A faint, yellowish-brown halo, a ghostly aura, has seeped from every single letter into the surrounding vellum. Like a drop of coffee on a paper towel. This is the acid burn. This is the chemical ghost of the word, spreading its poison. Then you see the true horror. You lean closer, your breath held tight in your chest. In the center of the letter O, the parchment has completely disintegrated. It's a hole, a perfect, letter-shaped hole. You can see the faint shape of the text on the page behind it. The word has literally eaten its way through its own home. The scribe's elegant lettering has become a series of windows into nothingness. The page is lacework, a delicate, crumbling net held together by the memory of what was written. When you touch the edge of the page, which you must not do, you know it would feel like a dead autumn leaf. So brittle that a strong sigh could shatter it into dust. This is the tragic irony you could never have foreseen. Your obsession with permanence was the very instrument of its destruction. The manuscripts that were written with the most care, with the darkest, most iron-rich ink, the ones intended as masterpieces, are often the ones suffering the most. The scribe who took the most pride in his work, who brewed the most potent ink, was unwittingly the most effective saboteur. He thought he was giving the page a soul. Instead, he was infecting it with a terminal, wasting disease. Modern science now wages a desperate war against your ink. Conservators use delicate chemical treatments to neutralize the acid. Trying to halt the corrosion, they create special humidified chambers to relax the brittle parchment, to give it back some of its life. But these are battlefield promotions. Last-ditch efforts to stabilize a dying soldier. The real work is in documentation. High-resolution digital scanners, using specific light frequencies, capture the ghostly images of the words before they vanish forever. We are, in essence, taking a photograph of a ghost in its final moments before it fades completely. We are saving the information, but admitting we have lost the object. We are saving the story, but the storyteller is turning to dust in our hands. Your ink, the recipe that stained history, has become a curse. The very words meant to carry knowledge through the ages are now consuming their own vessel. The text is not just telling a story of saints or kings, it is performing a slow, live-action story of its own self-destruction. The beautiful, looping script is the written record of a suicide that has been in progress since the day you cleaned your pen and felt the deep, bone-weary satisfaction of a finished page. You didn't just write on the page, you wrote its death sentence, one beautiful, corrosive letter at a time. But your work isn't always a slow march into blackness. Some pages are not destined for quiet, corrosive decay. They are meant to shout. They are meant to burn with a light that seems holy, a vibrancy that defies the damp, gray world outside the Scriptorium walls. After weeks spent tracing the monotonous, spidery script of a gospel, the abbot finally brings you the materials for the frontispiece. It's time for illumination. It's time to stop writing and start painting with poison, blood, and rock. The black ink was for words, for contracts, for God's law. The colors are for God's glory, which,
These colors are from
as you're about to discover,
Use them wisely.
is made from a far more expensive and dangerous collection of ingredients. Your first task is not with a quill, but with a heavy, flat stone of porphyry and a smaller, mushroom-shaped pestle called a muller. Your new job is to grind for hours, for days. You take a lump of raw, gritty mineral and you begin to crush it. Then grind it in a circular motion, adding a little water, grinding until your shoulder screams and your mind goes numb. You are reducing a mountain to dust, one agonizing rotation at a time, creating a powder finer than any flour. This dust is the soul of color. Let's start with red, the color of sin, of martyrs, of kings. The most coveted red is vermilion. It arrives at the monastery in a small, heavy pouch, a crystalline rock that glows like a hot coal. It is beautiful. It is also pure mercury sulfide, what they call cinnabar. As you grind it, a fine red dust lifts into the air, coating your tongue with a faint metallic taste. You know this material is a slow-acting poison. You've seen older illuminators with tremors in their hands, with missing teeth and a certain haunted, vacant look in their eyes. But the color is perfect. It is the most vibrant, most stable red in existence. It is the color of power. And breathing in a little poison is a small price to pay for painting the blood of Christ himself. If the abbot is on a budget, you'll be sent out to the oak grove for a different kind of red. Your task is to find the Kermes insect, a tiny parasite that lives on the branches. Specifically, you need the dried bodies of the pregnant females, which look like little reddish-gray pebbles glued to the bark. You spend an afternoon scraping thousands of these dead, pregnant bugs into a pouch. Back in the Scriptorium, you crush them, their dried husks and the unhatched eggs within release, a stunningly deep crimson stain. You are making one of the most beautiful colors in the world from a paste of pulverized insects. You try not to think about it as you mix the bug paste with the binder. It's organic. It's artisanal. It's utterly disgusting. But no color commands the reverence and the budget of blue, the blue used for the Virgin Mary's robes. A blue so deep It feels like you could fall into it. This is ultramarine, a name that literally means from beyond the sea. And it is the stone it comes from, lapis lazuli, is mined from a single mountain range in the faraway wasteland of Afghanistan. To get to your monastery, a single lump of this rock has been carried by donkey, traded by merchants who speak languages you've never heard of, smuggled across deserts, shipped over pirate-infested waters, and taxed at every port from the Levant to Venice. It is, ounce for ounce, significantly more valuable than gold. When you grind lapis, you treat the dust like a holy relic. Every speck is accounted for. Spilling it is not an accident. It is a mortal sin against the monastery's finances. You perform a complex process of mixing the ground powder into a paste with wax and resin, kneading it in a bowl of lye water to slowly separate the purest blue particles from the grayish stone impurities. It takes days. The result is a small amount of powder that radiates a color that seems to vibrate, a color that holds the entire sky and the entire sea in its dusty heart. To paint with this is to paint with geography, with adventure, with a king's ransom. This is not a color. It's a miracle you can hold in a seashell. The cheaper blue, azurite, is fine. It's a good, solid blue, but it's the blue of a wealthy merchant. Ultramarine is the blue of God. Of course, there are other, more mundane colors to prepare. For green, you don't grind a stone. You create a corrosion. You hang strips of copper over a pot of hot vinegar and let the acidic fumes eat away at the metal. After a few weeks, a bright green crust forms on the copper. This is verdigris. You scrape it off. It's a beautiful, jewel-like green, but it shares a terrible secret with your Iron Gall Ink. It is acidic. It is alive. A patch of verdigris, laid too thickly, will continue its work on the page, slowly eating a hole right through the vellum over the next few hundred years. You are painting a meadow that will one day become a window. For yellow, you might boil the weld plant for a cheap, sunny hue, or for a truly radiant gold, you might be given the impossibly expensive stigmas of the crocus flower saffron. All these powders, the toxic minerals, the crushed bugs, the smuggled stones are useless on their own. They are just dust. To turn them into paint, you need a binder. The most common is egg tempera. You crack an egg, carefully separating the yolk from the white. You gently roll the yolk in your hands to dry the membrane. Then pierce it and let the golden liquid run out. Leaving the sac behind, you mix this raw egg yolk with the pigment powder, perhaps with a drop of water or wine. The smell of raw egg and sulfurous minerals fills your small workspace. This simple, sticky concoction is what will glue the color to the page, giving it a soft, velvety sheen when it dries. And then, finally, you paint. With a brush made from a few hairs of a squirrel's tail, you dip into the pool of ultramarine and egg you spent a month preparing. You hold your breath. Your hand, so used to the rigid scratching of the quill, must now be impossibly delicate. You are not writing a letter. You are filling a space with a piece of the sky. Beside you is a tiny square of gold leaf, hammered so thin that a single breath could send it flying into oblivion. You paint a thin layer of sticky gesso. Breathe on it to make it tacky with the moisture of your breath. And then With the steadiest hand you can muster, you lay down the gold. It adheres instantly. A patch of solid sunlight on the page. You are not merely decorating a book. You are building a cathedral of light and color from the grimmiest, strangest, and most precious materials the world has to offer. Of solid sunlight on the page, you are not merely decorating a book. You are building a cathedral of light and color from the grimmiest, strangest, and most precious materials the world has to offer. But cathedrals are built with broken stone and broken bodies. And this one is no different. The glorious gold leaf you've just applied shimmers in the weak afternoon light. But you can't appreciate it. You can't feel anything but the cold. A deep, penetrating cold that has less to do with the weather and more to do with the stone floor beneath your feet. The stone walls around you, and the hard wooden bench that has been your personal cross for the last decade. Your body is a map of your work. Let's start with the name they'll eventually give you, not out of malice, but as a simple statement of fact. The crooked scribe, your spine, which was once straight, is now slowly, painstakingly, curving into the shape of your devotion. You lean forward over the slanted desk, your shoulders hunched against the chill and the strain. There are no ergonomic chairs here. There is no concept of lumbar support. Your support is the divine promise of salvation, which does very little for the cluster of screaming nerves at the base of your neck. Each morning, you rise from your straw pallet with a groan. Your back, a stiff, unforgiving plank. It takes a few minutes of painful movement before you can straighten up, and even then, you only reach a posture that resembles a question mark. Then there are your eyes. They were sharp once. You could see the individual hairs on a fly from across the room. Now, after years of squinting at tiny letters in the half-light of a scriptorium, they are failing you. You work by the thin, gray light of a winter sun filtering through a high window. Or worse, by the flickering, greasy flame of a tallow candle. The smoke stings, making your eyes water, blurring the lines you're trying so desperately to keep straight. You find yourself leaning closer, the tip of your nose almost touching the vellum. Sometimes the words swim together, a black river of meaningless shapes, and you have to sit back, closing your eyes and pressing the heels of your palms into them, hoping to force the world back into focus, with a cold certainty that one day the light will go out for good, and you will be left with only the memory of the words you can no longer see. And your hand, your hand, it is no longer just a part of your body. It is a tool, a gnarled, calloused claw permanently shaped around the memory of a goose feather. The 3 fingers you use to grip the quill thumb, index, and middle are in a constant state of cramp. A deep, searing ache travels from your knuckles up your wrist and into your shoulder. In the winter, the cold turns the ache into a sharp, biting pain, as if tiny shards of ice are grinding in your joints. You try to shake it out, to stretch your fingers, but the stiffness always returns. You are a machine made of flesh and bone, and the gears are grinding down. This silent, agonizing work is supposed to be an act of worship, a prayer written in ink. But prayer isn't supposed to feel like this. The silence of the scriptorium is absolute, broken only by the scrape of quill on vellum and the sound of your own strained breathing. But you have a secret, a tiny, whispered rebellion. In the vast, empty spaces of the margin, where no one would think to look for anything but a doodle or a correction, you leave behind the truth. You are finishing a particularly difficult line. Your ink blotchy, the vellum refusing to cooperate. With a sigh of pure frustration, you move your quill to the very edge of the page, and in minuscule letters, you scratch out your soul's complaint times. The parchment is hairy, and the ink is bad. Asterisk, it's a small thing, a petty grievance. But in this suffocating silence, it feels like a roar. You've left a piece of your real self on the page, a ghost of your discomfort. You are not alone in this. Across centuries, across monasteries and scriptoriums, your brothers in suffering are doing the same. They are leaving behind a secret history of pain, scribbled in the margins of sacred texts. One monk, after a long day, simply writes, asterisk, thank God. It will soon be dark. Asterisk, another, his hand cramping beyond endurance, scrawls a simple, plaintive cry times. Oh, my hand. Asterisk, there is no signature. No date. Just the fossilized echo of a moment of pure physical misery. These are not the lofty thoughts of theologians. They are the grumblings of factory workers on a medieval assembly line. They complain about their tools, their bodies, their boredom. One scribe, clearly at the end of his rope, leaves a full confession of the physical toll times. Writing is excessive drudgery. It crooks the back. It dims the sight. It twists the stomach and the sides. He doesn't mention God. He doesn't mention salvation. He mentions his stomach and his sides. The mundane, aching reality of his holy work. He is the patron saint of anyone who has ever had a desk job. And then there is the profound joy, the sheer, unadulterated relief of finishing. You have reached the bottom of the last page of a massive tome. Years of your life are bound in this ink and animal skin. You write the final word of the main text. And then, in the margin below, you pour out all your pent-up longing for freedom times. As the harbor is welcome to the sailor, so is the last line to the scribe. Asterisk, you have reached your port. The journey is over. The curse, for now, is lifted. You can almost feel the knots in your back begin to loosen. The fire in your wrist begin to cool. You look back over the pages. A life's work of devotion and pain, the brilliant colors of the illuminations, the perfect, uniform script, and tucked away in the corners, almost invisible, are your desperate whispers. The modern world might call it leaving a bad review on Yelp, but for you, it's the only legacy your aching body will ever leave. You are the crooked scribe, and your curse is written into the very fabric of the beauty you create. It's the small, human price for a piece of divine permanence. It's the small, human price for a piece of divine permanence. But what is permanence? You look up from your desk, your neck cracking like dry twigs, through the narrow, unglazed window of the Scriptorium. You can see it. Permanence is the new bell tower of the abbey, its stone bones slowly rising against a gray, indifferent sky. Permanence is the castle on the distant hill, a brutal stone fist clenched against the horizon. It's solid, it's heavy. It's meant to tell God and your enemies that you are here to stay. It's built of things that can blunt a sword and stop a charging horse. And what are you building? You look down at your hands. You're making a little rectangular object out of dead animal skin, wood, and thread made from boiled guts. You are staining it with a potion brewed from tree cancer and rust. If you dropped your work from that new bell tower, it might flutter to the ground, unharmed. If you dropped one of the tower's stone blocks on your work, it would be obliterated. By any reasonable measure, your book is a fragile, temporary, and slightly disgusting thing. The castle is forever. This is, of course, where you are deeply and wonderfully wrong. That castle on the hill is a high-maintenance child. Its roof timbers are always rotting. Its mortar is forever crumbling, weeping dust in the wind. The great hall is a cavern of drafts and smoke, and the Lord is constantly bankrupting himself to add a new wall or a deeper moat because the neighbor he hates just bought a newer, bigger trebuchet. A castle isn't a monument. It's a constant, shivering battle against gravity, water, and time. Its very purpose is to be a target. It invites violence. It screams, "Here is the power. Come and try to take it." And eventually, someone does. An army arrives. Or a new king decides the Lord is a threat. Or, most humiliatingly, a new kind of weapon is invented, gunpowder, that makes stone walls a quaint, expensive joke. The castle is besieged. It's starved out. It's smashed into rubble. Or it simply becomes obsolete. The Lord moves to a comfortable manor house with glass windows and no murder holes. The locals, ever practical, begin to borrow its stones to build their pigsties and farmhouses. The great fortress is cannibalized by the very people it was meant to protect. Within a few generations, the fist clenched against the sky becomes a few broken teeth of stone. A romantic ruin for shepherds to shelter in during a storm. The kingdom it represented is a half-remembered name in a song. The power is dust. Now, consider your book, your fragile little block of skin and ink. It has no strategic value. You cannot hide an army behind it. It offers no defense against a siege engine. Its weakness is its greatest strength. When the invaders come, you don't stand and fight for the book. You tuck it into a sack and run. It is small. It is portable. It can be hidden in a cellar, buried in a field, or spirited away in the middle of the night. While the castle is a stationary target, the book is a refugee, a survivor. Your book is passed down. It survives the fire that guts the Abbey Library because a quick-thinking brother threw it out the window. It is sold to a wealthy merchant who can't read a word of it but likes the gold leaf on the first page. It's stolen by a mercenary who hopes to ransom it, then loses it in a dice game to a scholar who actually understands its worth. It crosses borders, oceans, and centuries, passed from one hand to the next. Its binding rots away and is replaced. Its pages are trimmed by a careless binder. A later owner scribbles their own notes in the margins, arguing with you across a gulf of 500 years. The ink, your foul concoction of gallnuts and vitriol, doesn't just sit on the page, it bites into it. It chemically bonds with the collagen in the vellum, becoming an integral part of the structure. The words aren't resting on the skin, they are tattooed into it. They are a permanent scar. Even when the ink fades, the acidic ghost of its presence remains etched into the page. A faint brown shadow that can still be read. Think of it this way. The castle was built to defy the world. The book was built to be carried through it. The castle was a declaration of power, tied to a single place, a single family, a single political moment. The book is a vessel of ideas, and ideas are weightless, placeless, and far more resilient than stone. Today, you can go and stand in the ruins of that great castle. You can feel the cold of the remaining stones. Imagine the clamor of the courtyard and see the same sky the centuries once watched. But why are you there? How do you know its name? How do you know of the Great Siege of 1284? Or the treacherous deeds of the baron who built it? You know because someone, somewhere, wrote it down. In a temperature-controlled vault, under gentle light, lies a charter signed by the king, granting the land for that very castle. It's written on a single sheet of vellum in Iron Gall Ink. The king is gone. His dynasty is gone. The kingdom has been redrawn a dozen times. The castle is a tourist attraction with a gift shop, but the charter, the fragile piece of skin that gave the stone its purpose, is still here. It is still legible. The ink, brewed in a pot over a smoky fire, has outlived the kingdom. The massive walls were a skeleton, impressive but ultimately lifeless. Your book, your little collection of stained pages bound with gut, is the ghost. It's the voice that still speaks. You, the scribe with the aching back and the ink-stained fingers, hunched over your desk in the cold. You were not just copying words, you were forging a more profound and lasting piece of permanence than any king with his army of masons could ever dream of. You were building the memory that would outlast the monument. You were building the memory that would outlast the monument. And like any powerful idea, it couldn't be kept behind stone walls forever. The recipe for your foul-smelling potion, brewed from wasp nests and rust, was about to escape the monastery. It was about to get a job in the real world, and the real world, you would find, was so much filthier than the Scriptorium. This ink of yours had a unique resume. Its #1 skill, aggressive permanence, while your old friend, Carbon Black, sat politely on the surface of the vellum. Iron Gall Ink wasn't a guest. It was a home invader. It soaked in, oxidized, and bit into the very fibers of the page with its acidic teeth. You couldn't just scrape it away without leaving a scar, a telltale wound in the parchment. For any king, merchant, or lawyer, this was a revolutionary feature. It was the medieval equivalent of a tamper-proof seal. It was the official ink of no backsies, so the potion seeped out from under the heavy oak doors of the abbey. Scribes, tired of the meager rations and the endless chanting, took their skills to the burgeoning cities. You might find yourself trading your monk's habit for a clerk's tunic. But don't imagine it's an upgrade. The room is smaller. The straw in your mattress has more fleas. And the man you answer to is not an abbot concerned with your soul, but a portly merchant concerned with his shipping manifests. The pressure, somehow, is worse. A mistake on a Bible verse might earn you a week of prayer and fasting. A mistake on a contract, a misplaced zero, could get your throat slit in a dark alley. Your new desk is in a cramped office overlooking a street that smells of tanner's lye and discarded oyster shells. There is no holy silence here. Only the rumble of cartwheels on cobblestone and the endless, shrill arguments of your neighbors. But one smell is constant. One smell follows you from the cloister to the counting house. The sharp, metallic tang of your ink. You brew it in the same pot, but now you're not writing the word of God. You're writing bills of lading, property deeds, and court summons. You are recording the mundane, greedy, and litigious scaffolding that holds a kingdom together. You are staining history, one transaction at a time. This simple recipe galls, vitriol. Binder becomes the default operating system for the Western world. It is the ink of power. When King John is forced to meet his rebellious barons in a field at Runnymede in 1215, the demands they press upon him, the Magna Carta, are written in Iron Gall Ink. The promises of liberty, the limits on a king's power, are chemically bonded to a sheet of sheepskin, a contract held together by the same acid that is slowly, inevitably, trying to devour it. Century pass. The world changes. Men cross oceans in towering wooden ships. Convinced the world is round, they discover new continents and promptly begin fighting over them. In a hot, humid room in Philadelphia in 1776, a group of men in powdered wigs decides to break up with a king. The list of their grievances, the declaration of their newfound independence, is written with a quill dipped in that same familiar potion of crushed wasp galls and corrosive metal. They are signing their own death warrants, committing treason with the most permanent ink they have. The words have to stick. The stain has to be absolute. This ink isn't just for politics. It's for genius. In a cluttered studio in Florence, Leonardo da Vinci sketches a flying machine, a tank, the anatomy of a human heart. His thoughts, leaping centuries ahead of his time, are pinned to the page with Iron Gall Ink. The fluid dynamics of water, the subtle smile of a woman, all captured by a fermented brew that smelled vaguely of vinegar and rust. In Leipzig, Johann Sebastian Bach dips his quill and a torrent of music flows onto the page. Fugues and cantatas, so complex, they seem like mathematical proofs of God's existence. The notes are stark and black, sinking into the paper, a silent ghost of a sound that will echo for eternity. Back in your little office, you have no idea this is happening. You are not writing for the ages. You are writing to get paid so you can afford a meat pie that isn't 90% gristle. You are drafting a will for a dying wool merchant, his greedy children hovering in the next room like vultures. You watch the pale, grayish ink of your fresh strokes slowly darken on the page, oxidizing in the air, turning a deep, resolute black. The man's final wishes are solidifying right before your eyes, becoming as fixed and unchangeable as the grave he's headed for. From royal decrees that start wars to personal letters that break hearts, this ink is the silent witness. It is the dark blood of bureaucracy, the medium for every law, every treaty, every scientific breakthrough, and every love poem for over 1,000 years. It outlived the men who made it, the kings who commanded it, and in many cases, the languages in which it was written. It became more than a tool. It became the physical substance of memory, the stain left behind by human ambition, desperation, and genius. Your little potion of rotten metal wasn't just for copying books anymore. It was now the ink that wrote the world. Substance of memory, the stain left behind by human ambition, desperation, and genius. Your little potion of wrought in metal wasn't just for copying books anymore. It was now the ink that wrote the world. And yet, for all the treaties signed and kingdoms declared, the most haunting thing your ink ever did was to trap a ghost. Not a specter in the halls or a ghoul in the graveyard. It trapped the most mundane ghost of all, the person who made it. Step forward 1,000 years. You're no longer in a freezing scriptorium. You're in a climate-controlled archive, the air humming with the quiet thrum of dehumidifiers. The light is low, casting a gentle, reverent glow. Before you, under a thick pane of glass, lies a single page of vellum. It's a page from a book that has outlived empires. A book that saw the Black Death come and go. A book that was already ancient when Columbus was still learning to walk. Your first thought is one of awe at the text. The Latin is perfect. The letters formed with an inhuman consistency. It looks like it was printed by a machine. But then you lean closer. You let your eyes relax. And you stop seeing the words. You start seeing the marks. There, in the margin, is a faint, greasy smudge. It's a thumbprint, a ghost's thumbprint. You can almost feel the cold, slightly oily skin of a man who perhaps hadn't washed in a week, who maybe ate a piece of bread with his hands and then, without thinking, steadied the page. His DNA, his unique signature, is trapped right there, clearer than any name he could have written. He is touching you from across a millennium. You trace the lines of a capital letter, a magnificent, illuminated P. The gold leaf still shimmers, but look at the fine black line that outlines it. Halfway down the stem, the line wobbles just for a fraction of a millimeter. It shivers. Was that the moment a brother dropped a book in the scriptorium? The sound echoing in the enforced silence. Was it a sudden, bone-deep shiver from the cold that seeped through his woolen robes? Or was it just a moment of profound exhaustion? His muscles screaming after 12 hours of holding the same position, his mind wandering to the slice of bread and ale he might get for supper, whatever the cause. That tremor is the fossil of a human moment. It's the record of a heartbeat, a flicker of fallibility in an ocean of perfection. Your digital life is clean. You tap a backspace key, and your error vanishes without a trace. There is no scar, no memory of the mistake. The medieval scribe had no such luxury. Look there, near the bottom of the page. You can see that the vellum is thinner, rougher than the surrounding skin. You can almost see the frantic scraping, the sharp edge of the knife erasing a mistake, a moment of panic. The skin of the dead calf is permanently scarred because a living man's attention lapsed for a single second. He then had to carefully write over the abraded surface, his ink bleeding slightly into the damaged fibers. It's a confession of failure, preserved forever. These pages are not silent. They are whispering. They tell a story that runs parallel to the sacred text they carry. You see the faint, silvery lines of the ruling, etched into the page with a lead point to guide his hand. You see the pinpricks in the corners where he stretched and fixed the page to his slanted desk. You see the slight variation in the ink's color, a darker patch where he dipped his quill into a freshly stirred pot, a lighter, browner section where the iron solids were settling at the bottom. This isn't a document. It's a crime scene. It's the evidence of a life, the greasy lamp black, the alien gallnut, the corrosive vitriol, the acrid urine. All these strange and sordid ingredients didn't just combine to make ink. They combined to make a medium for ghosts. The scribe took the remnants of fire, insects, stone, and his own body, and used them to leave a permanent stain of his own existence on the skin of a dead animal. We read the words of Augustine or Aquinas, but we are touching the soul of the forgotten monk named John, or Thomas, or perhaps a man whose name was never recorded at all. He sat in that cold, silent room, his stomach rumbling, his back a column of fire, and he poured his life, drop by drop, onto the page. He is not a footnote in a history book. He is that thumbprint. He is that shiver. He is that scar. And so, as you lie here now, in the quiet of your room, warm beneath your blankets, think of that scribe. Think of the immense, almost unimaginable, physical effort that went into creating a single word. Every letter you type is a fleeting pulse of electricity, an arrangement of pixels that exists only as long as there is power. It has no weight, no texture, no smell. It leaves no ghost behind. The scribe's work was the opposite. It was all substance, the weight of the goose quill in his hand, the gritty texture of the vellum under his palm, the sour, metallic smell of the ink he brewed himself. His words were not just ideas, they were physical objects, built from the world around him. And from his own body, his name is gone. The sound of his voice has long since faded. The world he knew, with its wooden huts and stone castles, has vanished. But his labor endures. It sits in a quiet, dark room, a tangible echo of a life spent in silence. The page is not just a carrier of information. It is the man himself, flattened and preserved. His cold, his hunger, his devotion, his boredom, it's all there. Locked in the chemical reaction between an oak tree's cancer and a corrosive green crystal, a ghost, waiting patiently on the page. Allow the quiet to settle around you now. Let the story of the ink, the soot, and the shivering hand fade into the background. The work is done. The page is finished. The candle has been snuffed out. All that is left is the deep, profound silence of the scriptorium after a long day's work. The silence of a job complete. The silence of rest, sweet dreams,